Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would give my little fights breakdown and also my little fight analysis and fight review of the Oleksandr Usyk versus Tyson Fury rematch. And of course, for those of you that did not end up watching the fight, Oleksandr Usyk was able to retain his titles, and not only that, but of course beat that of Tyson the Gypsy King Fury in the rematch. And of course, for those of you that fast forward to my channel or fast forward earlier to this year when the first match ended up happening, I believe that I predicted that at Tyson the Gypsy King Fury to win because I thought that he was just going to be too big. And I thought that more than likely that combined with his skill set, and Fury still, as you can see, is a very decently skilled fighter. He's really the only one in Oleksandr Usyk's career to really give him a major challenge. Now, of course, certain people may debate Anthony Joshua in the rematch, but in my view, Oleksandr Usyk clearly won that probably about 8 rounds to 4. But Tyson Fury, he had some very good moments in this fight, just like he did in the first fight, especially in the first half of the fight. But the thing that I do think that mainly wore Tyson Fury down was not just the weight gain, but also the fact that Oleksandr Usyk is just a special level of fighter. And when I took a look at that first fight, but not only the first fight, but the second fight, it was very apparent to me that Tyson Fury, for the first time in his boxing career, that he was not able to do the things that he wanted to do against that other boxer that was opposing to him. And usually that's what elite level boxers can do. They can beat you either in a multitude of ways, or they can beat you in the way that they really want to beat you down in or outbox you in. And Tyson Fury, of course, he came into the rematch gaining weight, stating that he was going to do somewhat of the same things as what he did to Deontay Wilder. And I stated that in my fight prediction of this up and coming fight, that even though in the first go round, I predicted that of Tyson Fury to win because of his combined size and his combined skill, I predicted Usyk to win the rematch. Because even though there were certain people, like when I took a look at Pro Box TV, they were claiming this stuff about how they thought Tyson Fury was going to win the rematch because he was completely winning the first part of the fight until he ended up getting caught with a quote unquote punch from the gods or a punch that ended up hurting Tyson Fury. And that's not really what I seen. What I seen in the first fight was a very competitive fight throughout the first half of the fight. Fury was, of course, very clearly starting to adjust very well and starting to take the fight in the middle rounds. But then round 7 starting, it was very apparent that Tyson Fury was having a decent amount of problems avoiding Oleksandr Usyk's feints and biting on certain feints. And on top of that, just, having problems with the speed, the angles and the movement that Usyk would constantly shoot at. It's completely different fighting a fighter like an Oleksandr Usyk than what it is a Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. Now, both of those fighters, in my view, at their absolute peaks, talking about both Wilder and Usyk, I think that they're both very formidable opponents, and I think that Wilder at one point in time also was an A-grade level boxer, but he's not someone anywhere near on the level of Oleksandr Usyk, at least skill-wise. He's not as quick. He's definitely nowhere near as maneuverable. He has nowhere near the level of defense, nor the level of head movement, nor the level of of head movement or foot movement or that of footwork. Deontay Wilder, even though he's very particularly dangerous, he's a lot like a George Foreman. He's someone that, although he's very particularly dangerous and he has great athleticism, he's a dude that, pretty much needs to fight in his type of way. And if he can't get you in his type of style or his type of way, he's mainly going to lose, especially if he's up against an elite level boxer like that of a Tyson Fury or possibly somebody else. But Oleksandr Usyk, I thought once again, pretty much had the same game plan within the first fight, or excuse me, the second fight is what he did the first fight. Now, it was very particularly interesting because certain adjustments had to be made for both fighters. And I actually think that Tyson Fury made some very good adjustments. I think that he was keeping his right hand up very well in the first half of the fight, which is what I said Tyson Fury would need to do because one of the problems, what he had in the second fight, excuse me, in the first fight, was that he wouldn't keep his right hand up anywhere near enough, which would cause that overhand left from Oleksandr Usyk, of course, in his southpaw stance, to just land way too particularly easy. There was just no reason to keep your hand down that low, but he tried to keep it up this fight, and I think that he was very successful, especially within the first 5 or 6 rounds. But I think once round 6 started to turn on, I think Oleksandr Usyk, who planned potentially for Tyson Fury to tire out in the second half of the fight, just like he did in the first half of the fight. And that plan appeared overall to be working well because it was very apparent that from round 6 or round 7 onward that Tyson Fury once again was starting to tire. And that's why, in my personal view, The weight gain I thought was a very good game plan for that of a Deontay Wilder because Deontay Wilder is very hittable, and on top of that, he's of your own same physical dimensions, and you can use the leaning, you can use, the clinch, you can use, that reach and that height that you have against Wilder. But the fact that you're in similar dimensions, you're going to be able to use that a lot more to your advantage. Now, you still can use that a lot to your advantage against someone like an Oleksandr Usyk, but Fury actually, when you talk about his size, he probably was actually too oversized to take certain advantages of what he usually could with other fighters as what he could against an Oleksandr Usyk, really because of the type of fighter that Oleksandr Usyk is. When you fight some of these fighters like a Manny Pacquiao, or when you fight some of these guys like a Lomachenko or a Usyk or something like that, or a Canelo Alvarez, for example, because they have such shifty movement, and on top of that, overall they can pretty much get inside very quickly. At least guys with the quicker feet such as Usyk and Lomachenko and Manny Pacquiao. Now Canelo, he does not necessarily have the quickest of feet, but he can also get on the inside. Those guys, they can get on the inside and they can very much damage you. And you might try to out clinch them, but at the end of the day, the inside is a lot of the times where they're going to have the advantage because they have the shorter arm reach, which means what? That closer on the inside, their punches are usually going to land first and a bit quicker because it does not take as much momentum, nor does it take as much time to get their punches off on the inside. With a couple of exceptions of maybe some very supremely gifted and very quick fighters. But Usyk, in my view, was really starting to take over in the second half of the fight. I believe that the scorecards were all 116 to 112, which means that this fight would have been about, I believe, 8 rounds to 4. I think that I had it a bit closer. I think I had it 7 rounds to 5. But I mean, you could have one or two swing rounds in there. So I'm not really surprised that the judges all scored it the same way at 116 to 112. And I think that Usyk was just completely taken over the second half of the fight. And it was very obvious that the 20-pound weight gain that Tyson Fury did, that in my view, it was not the brightest idea in order to do it for this fight. I understand why he did it. And I think maybe he was thinking that he could get Usyk once again to retreat very early on. But in my view, Tyson Fury should have kept the same weight as what he did in the first fight and really just change his game plan. Because once again, why would you gain 20 pounds against a guy that is just way more maneuverable and just way better as a boxer and just way too hard to hit than someone like that of a Deontay Wilder? Fury is, a great natural boxer, especially for his size. But when you talk about possibly dictating the pace, Usyk is a master at dictating the pace. And Fury was going to have to keep that jab in his face and attack the body repeatedly. And on top of that, really keep Usyk on the back foot. And that wasn't going to work with Tyson Fury just really trying to exchange with him in the middle and trying to outbox him in the middle, which is why, once again, eventually, you've seen Tyson Fury back up because he gained that 20 pounds. And I think he thought that Usyk was just going to retreat on the back foot the whole entire time and pretty much, be like a stray, lost, scared little puppy. And that's not what ended up happening here. Usyk ended up not only having an answer when he was pushed back, but on top of that, he was just way too quick and way too maneuverable and way too dangerous within close exchanges for Tyson Fury overall to really take advantage of any size advantage that he may have had. So in my view, Tyson Fury, once again, he did not play the fight somewhat correctly. But you know what? You see this overall in certain fights where people may ask the question, why did this guy not throw more punches? Why did this guy not push the guy more forward? Why did this guy not fight a little bit more on the back foot? And the main reason why that is because that fighter can't, at least against that particular fighter. I used to see it all the time with Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner, people always would say, well, if he would just throw more punches, if he would just do this, he would win so many more fights, or he would actually have a chance against the bigger elite guys. Well, the reason why certain fighters don't end up throwing more, or the reason why fighters start to be on the retreat, is because they see something that is coming their way that is really throwing them off or that is threatening them. The reason why Adrian Broner didn't throw that much against fighters like Mikey Garcia or Marcos Maidana or Sean Porter is because he couldn't throw against those guys, because he thought if he threw more against those guys that there would be more opportunity to get hit. And that's what a certain amount of people don't understand when it comes to that of not only boxing, but also that, of NBA basketball and other sports as well. For example, when it comes to, an NFL football player, or a quarterback, for example, or a wide receiver, they may run certain routes, but if a cornerback is very good, exceptional, like a Deion Sanders or a Richard Sherman or a Josh Norman at one point in time, they may not run particular routes because that cornerback might be throwing them off their rhythm and they can't do what they regularly do. And that's what great all-time great boxers can do. And it's very apparent that Oleksandr Usyk isn't just a great boxer, he's an all-time great level boxer. Not only is he undefeated, the man has never been knocked down. He is a gold medalist in the amateurs. And on top of that, he was undisputed in two separate weight classes. And he was undisputed in a weight class to where he never should have been undisputed in the first place. And he was able to defeat AJ Anthony Joshua, a fight that I believe he was not favored to win. And he also beat that of Tyson Fury on two separate occasions. Two fights also that he also was not supposed to win. Now, apparently he's supposed to have a rematch with that of Daniel Dubois, but, we'll see what ends up happening there. I think that Usyk more than likely will get him again, but you never know. Dubois might have a little bit of an energy shift because of the great streak that he's been on for the past three fights, so you just never personally know. We'll see what ends up happening there. But I do believe that Usyk is just going to be way too talented and skilled, unless, of course, the age possibly plays a factor, because by next year, Usyk, I believe, will be about 38 years old, which is going to be interesting to see if the LDBC and new media brings up that factor, or certain people love to bring up that factor, because Usyk now, of course, is going to be looked at by many, including myself, as the number one pound-for-pound fighter. It's very hard to not dispute, or very hard to dispute, that Usyk does not have a great argument as the number one overall pound-for-pound fighter. Now, I do think that Crawford has a great compelling case as well, but I just think that the Tyson Fury victories, I think that they're a little bit bigger, or probably bigger or more massive than probably any of the wins in Crawford's career, to be quite honest with you, just in my personal view. Now, some people would say Errol Spence, and Errol Spence, of course, was a great win, but I would say that the Fury win was even greater, in my personal view. But some, of course, would disagree. That's up to you. But once again, great on Mr. Oleksandr Usyk. I do not think that the 20-pound weight gain by Tyson Fury was a very smart choice, because you are going to have to, at certain times, kind of spar without Oleksandr Usyk, or kind of exchange or sword fight with him in terms of getting certain jabs in there, getting certain punches in there. He's just way too maneuverable in order to sometimes not pressure him up against the ropes. But on top of that, you're also going to have moments where you are going to have to box a little bit with Oleksandr Usyk, at least to try and push him back. He's just way too maneuverable. And if you try to knock him out with every single punch, or if you try to knock him out too willingly, he's going to avoid those punches very eagerly, or he's going to avoid those punches quite easily. And Tyson Fury was trying to throw that uppercut in the second half of the fight to the body, to try and get it repeatedly there, just like the first fight. But Usyk was crunching down a little bit better. He was defending that shot a decent amount better. Usyk, from what it seemed, was getting hit less times in this fight than what he was in the first fight. And of course, you expect that with an all-time great level fighter, because all-time great level fighters, they can improve their performances than what they did in the first fight. And in my view, that's what Oleksandr Usyk did. Now, in my view, it was still about the same score, about 7 rounds to 5 or 8 rounds to 4 going to Oleksandr Usyk. I had both fights around there, but he did improve certain aspects. And to be fair, Fury also improved certain aspects. I just think that the 20-pound weight gain for such a light-footed and such a lightly and quick fighter, and such a maneuverable fighter that can counter you, possibly if you overextend any punches, I just didn't think that it was the best idea, because you're not going to be able to bulldoze out of an Oleksandr Usyk like you were against the Deontay Wilder. Even if you want to bulldoze him intelligently like he did against Deontay Wilder, in my view, gaining the 20 pounds was not the way to go. I think that being, overall less weight like Tyson Fury was on the first fight would have given him possibly a little bit more stamina. And on top of that, would have made him a little bit quicker. I think that he should have attacked the body a little bit more. And Fury was trying. He was doing it very good in the first half of the fight, but the second half, he didn't really have a great body attack. And it was very clear that not only once again was he running out of stamina because of Usyk's just constant angles and constant movement, but on top of that, he was just starting to tire, just like he did the first fight. It's just completely different fighting against a fighter like that. Now, of course, some may also ask the question, how good is Fury really until, after he was beat by after the Deontay Wilder fights? Well, Fury was still looked at pretty much as the best heavyweight, and of course, he did knock out Dillian White quite easily. And of course, after that, he did have a very shitty performance against Francis Ngannou, but Fury very clearly is still one of the top fighters, or was. Now, is he quite the same as what he once was? Perhaps not. Maybe he's a bit slower. Maybe he doesn't have quite the same stamina anymore. He definitely has a little bit more wear and tear, in my view, on his tires, a little bit more tread on his tires than what Usyk does. But the question is where do both gentlemen go from here? Well, I'm not really quite sure if we're going to see Tyson Fury in the ring again. I could be wrong. Maybe there could be him versus AJ Anthony Joshua. That would be a big fight. We'll have to see if that fight potentially happens. And it appears, of course, the next fight for Usyk is Daniel Dubois. But Usyk, in my personal view, the way that his career has gone, he has to be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And after the way his career has looked, after defeating some of the fighters that he has defeated, because in my view, he had a very good and talented cruiserweight division when there was a lot of undefeated fighters there, such as Glowacki and Michael Hunter and some of the other guys there. He actually defeated some very decent fighters. Murat Gassiev, not all those guys were A plus talented, but A minus maybe at the very least. And on top of that, once again, he went up, beat Danny Dubois, who later on became a champion, although a little bit unexpected. And then, of course, later on, he was able to defeat AJ Anthony Joshua. And then, of course, Mr. Tyson the Gypsy King Fury. So the conversation now has to be about where is Usyk ranked all time? Because now we have to have a conversation about is Usyk in the same conversation with certain fighters overall like that of a Lennox Lewis? Is he in the same conversation with certain fighters like that even of a Muhammad Ali or Rocky Marciano? And I know that certain people overall are not going to agree with me there, because what that would mean is that Oleksandr Usyk is going to be placed on a level debatably within the top 30 at the very least, or top 20, particularly possibly even the top 10, because Oleksandr Usyk once again did something that he was never supposed to do. But at the very least, Oleksandr Usyk, once again, he has to at least be on the level in terms of greatness as a Joe Calzaghe and Andre Ward, a Canelo Alvarez, a Bernard Hopkins, a Terrence Bud Crawford. He's at least on that level in terms of greatness. Now, if you would place him within the same realm as a Chavez Sr., as a Roberto Duran, or even the top 10 greatest fighters of all time, in my view, like a Floyd Mayweather or a Rocky Marciano, a Muhammad Ali, a Manny Pacquiao, a Sugar Ray Leonard, a Roy Jones Jr., if you would place him on that level, that's really up to you. Sugar Ray Robinson, if you would place him on that level, that's really up to you. But Usyk, at the very least, is at least knocking on the door of the top 20 pound for pound of all time, in my personal view. Definitely no doubt about it. He's at least knocking on the door. If not knocking on the door of top 10 of all time, in my personal view. Because what he did and the skill set that he has is just phenomenal, especially at 37 years old. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see where this goes. I predict more than likely that Fury would either fight AJ Anthony Joshua next or possibly may retire. He may won a trilogy, but in my personal view, I thought that he lost both quite clearly. And for Mr. Oleksandr Usyk, of course, it appears that the Danny Dubois rematch, it appears that that pretty much is up for schedule. So we'll see what happens. Once again, to say it one last time, I thought that the weight gain from Tyson Fury was a major mistake, because when you deal with a very shifty fighter and a smaller fighter like that can take advantage of those angles, gaining that weight, that means that every punch and that every movement you have is going to take more energy because you have more weight to move around. And that might, be better against someone like a Wilder, where you can take breaks in between because you can take clinches and exchanges well. And on top of that, he's way more hittable. But what happens when you get in the ring against a guy that's very maneuverable and slippery? You can't hit him anywhere near as much. He's faster than you. And then after a while, you start to get tired by the middle of the rounds, or in the second half of the fight. So in my view, pretty much what happened is what I predicted. Usyk won by unanimous decision. Fury, even as smart and as great as a fighter as he is, he just didn't have the right setup in my personal view. And he had the right game plan at first, but he just wasn't going to be able to sustain that throughout the whole entire fight. But it is what it is, not with the weight that he gained. And on top of that, this is just a different level of fighter than what he's ever seen, so it is what it is. And once again, this is the first time that I've ever seen where Fury was not able to do something with a fighter that he really wanted to do. Because he was able to do it with White, he was able to do it with Chisora, he was able to do it with Wilder, he was able to even do it with Klitschko. He pretty much embarrassed all those fighters. But Oleksandr Usyk is the only one that was able to solve the Tyson Fury puzzle. So good on him. But anyways, once again, that's about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see where this goes. Very excited to see where both of these guys go next, especially Mr. Oleksandr Usyk, who right now is my number one pound for pound fighter, either him or Crawford. But I think this Fury win would give Usyk, in my view, the rightful spot at the number one pound for pound spot, if not possibly the fighter of the year as well. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what y'all thought, and I'll talk to y'all later.